Harry Potter never expected that his 5th year at Hogwarts would turn out like this. The whispers about Voldemort's return were growing louder, and every day felt heavier than the last. But what shook him the most wasn't the rumors in the halls or the fear that clung to the students. It was Snape's sudden, mysterious proposal. "Potter," Snape had said one cold morning, his black robes billowing as he approached the Gryffindor common room, "your potential is wasted. You fumble with charms and spells you do not understand. I can change that. I can make you powerful, truly powerful, but it requires commitment." Harry had frozen. Power. It was tempting, yes, but Snape, the man who had tormented him for years, who seemed to despise him with every fiber of his being, and yet there was something in Snape's eyes that was not pure malice, something calculating, something dangerous. "You want me to learn dark magic?" Harry asked cautiously, his hand clenched around the strap of his bag, as if gripping it could ground him in reality. Snape's lips curled into a small, almost imperceptible smile. "Dark magic is not evil, Potter. It is power, and power is survival. You want to survive, don't you?" Harry's mind swirled. Survival? Yes. He wanted to protect his friends, his family, everyone he cared about. But the thought of stepping into a world of shadows, of crossing lines he had never crossed, it scared him. And yet, the more he looked at Snape, the more he felt an odd pull, a chance to understand magic in ways he'd never dreamed of. "Fine," Harry whispered finally, his voice trembling. "I'll try, but I won't go too far." Snape's expression softened slightly, though his eyes remained sharp. "Potter, there is no too far in magic, only the bold and the weak." And so it began. The first lessons were small, deceptively simple. Snape taught Harry how to channel energy from fear, anger, and even hate into his spells. He showed him how to strike with precision, how to defend not just with shields, but with curses that could incapacitate without mercy. Harry felt the thrill of control, the intoxicating sensation of knowing that, for once, he could hold power instead of being at the mercy of it. But the darker the lessons became, the more uneasy Harry felt. There was a moment when Snape demonstrated a spell that could manipulate minds, bending will and thought to the caster's command. Harry's stomach turned as he realized the potential. This was not just power, it was domination. And yet the temptation was strong. The world had been cruel to him, had labeled him the boy who lived, but powerless in ways that hurt more than any curse ever could. "You hesitate," Snape said one evening in the dungeons, his voice slicing through the shadows. "Power is not given, Potter, it is taken, and if you cannot take it, someone else will." Harry nodded silently, biting his lip. He didn't speak, because he knew Snape was right. The wizarding world wasn't kind, and those who wielded power without conscience often ruled. The question was whether he could keep a piece of himself intact while walking this dangerous path. As days turned into weeks, Harry noticed subtle changes in himself. He no longer flinched at Snape's sarcasm or sharp words. He moved with confidence, his spells growing faster, sharper, darker. And yet, he missed the warmth of friendship, the laughter of Ron and Hermione, the simplicity of days before everything became so complicated. One night, as Harry practiced a particularly difficult curse alone, Snape appeared silently behind him. "Excellent," he said, his voice almost approving. "But remember, Potter, darkness is not just a tool, it is a teacher, and it will take as much from you as you take from it." Harry swallowed hard, staring at his wand. He felt the weight of the choice he had made. The dark path was thrilling, powerful, but was he ready for what it might demand of him? Harry couldn't hide the changes for long. It started small. His spells were stronger, sharper, more precise. Even Professor McGonagall raised an eyebrow at his transfiguration work, noting that something in him had shifted. But it wasn't just skill. There was a confidence now, a shadow that moved behind his eyes, and those who knew him best began to sense it. Ron was the first to notice. They were in the Gryffindor common room, working on homework, when Ron peeked over Harry's parchment. "Harry, what's this?" he asked, frowning. "This isn't exactly normal magic." Harry looked at his friend, feeling a twinge of guilt. "It's just advanced spells," he said, trying to sound casual, but the truth twisted in his stomach like a knot. Advanced, dark, dangerous, he wasn't sure anymore where the line was drawn. Hermione, ever sharp-eyed, noticed even more. She cornered him in the library one evening, her brow furrowed. "Harry, whatever you're doing with Snape, it's not safe. It's not you. I can see it in the way you look at your wand like it's more than a tool." Harry felt a pang of frustration mixed with fear. He knew she was right, yet he couldn't deny the exhilaration that Snape's lessons gave him. "I have to do this, Hermione," he said softly. "I can't just wait for Voldemort to come and pick us off one by one. If I don't get stronger, none of us survive." Hermione's eyes softened, but her voice remained firm. "There has to be another way, Harry. Dark magic isn't the answer. It never is. Look what it did to—" He cut her off, shaking his head. "I know what it did to people, Hermione, but it's different with me. I'm not the same as them. I can control it." Ron sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Mate, that's what scares me." But Snape's lessons were relentless. He pushed Harry further each day, introducing spells and techniques that Harry could barely comprehend at first. He taught him how to sense other people's emotions, to manipulate fear, even to defend himself by using the darkness inside him. It was intoxicating. Every time Harry succeeded, a rush of power surged through him that he had never known. It wasn't long before the first test came. A group of Slytherins had cornered Neville in the corridor, laughing cruelly at his clumsiness. Harry had wanted to intervene as usual, but something in him paused. He raised his wand, feeling the dark energy Snape had taught him course through his veins. The spell he cast was precise, shocking even to himself, a jinx that sent the Slytherins flying into the walls, unharmed but terrified. Neville stared at him in awe. "Harry, how did you?" Harry lowered his wand, feeling a cold thrill run down his spine. "I can handle myself now," he said quietly. "I don't need anyone to save me or you." That night, as he lay in bed, Harry realized the truth. He liked the power. He liked the fear it could inspire. And yet, the guilt weighed on him like a shadow he couldn't shake. He had crossed a line, even if no one else knew it yet. Meanwhile, Snape watched quietly from the shadows of the dungeons. "Good," he murmured to himself, a hint of satisfaction in his tone. "The boy is learning, but the real challenge is whether he can keep himself from being consumed." As the days went on, whispers spread through Hogwarts. Some students sensed the change, though they couldn't pinpoint it. Even the portraits seemed wary, as if the castle itself sensed that something dark was growing within Harry Potter. And deep down, Harry began to wonder if he could truly walk this path without losing himself or everyone he loved. One evening, Snape called him to the dungeons. "Potter," he said, his voice low and commanding, "it is time you learned what true control is. Fear, anger, loyalty, they are weapons, but they are also chains. Break them, learn to use them, or they will break you." Harry nodded, gripping his wand tightly. He knew this would be another step into darkness, and yet he couldn't turn back now. The power was his, and with it came the first real taste of what he could become. The next few weeks were tense. Harry's transformation did not go unnoticed. Hermione became increasingly distant, her eyes always wary when he approached. Ron tried to joke around, to bring Harry back to the boy he had known, but even his humor felt hollow now. Harry wasn't the same, and everyone could sense it. It started with the duels. Harry had always been a skilled wizard, but now, under Snape's guidance, he moved with an unnatural precision. He could disarm opponents in moments, predict their moves before they even made them, and use curses that were subtle, cruel, and terrifyingly effective. Students who had once bullied him now gave him a wide berth. Some whispered that Potter had changed, though no one could say exactly how. Hermione finally confronted him in the library, her face pale under the flickering candlelight. "Harry, this isn't you. Look at what you did to those Slytherins last week. You scared them. You scared me." But Harry's jaw tightened. "I didn't hurt anyone permanently. I protected Neville. That's what matters. You think I can stand around and wait for danger to find me? I can't, not anymore." "But the way you did it, using fear, using dark magic," Hermione's voice cracked. "It's dangerous, Harry. Even if you think you're in control, it can take over you." He turned away, gripping his wand under the table. "I'm not afraid anymore, and I'm not powerless. That's the difference." Ron put a hand on his shoulder, trying to reach him. "Mate, just be careful. I don't like what I'm seeing." But Harry barely heard him. The thrill of power had started to drown out the voices of reason. He thought of Snape, of the dark lessons, and a strange pride began to grow inside him. He wasn't just surviving anymore, he was commanding. The real test came during a routine patrol of the castle one night. Harry had been assigned with a few prefects to check the hallways. When a group of older Slytherins cornered them, Harry didn't hesitate. His wand was already raised, and the energy he had been training with pulsed through him. In moments, the group was thrown back, tripping over each other and panicking. The prefects stared at him in awe, but Harry felt nothing but satisfaction. For the first time, he realized he could defend himself and anyone else in the castle, and no one could stop him. Yet even as the adrenaline faded, a small voice whispered in the back of his mind. Snape's words echoed, "Darkness will take as much as you give it." Harry shook his head, trying to push the thought away. Control was his now, it had to be. The next day, rumors about Harry's display spread throughout Hogwarts. Some students whispered that he was becoming reckless, even dangerous. Others whispered admiration. Harry didn't care, he only cared about mastering what Snape had taught him. That evening, Snape summoned him again. The dungeon was darker than usual, shadows clinging to the walls like living things. "Potter," Snape said softly, yet with an edge that made Harry shiver. "You've grown stronger, but strength alone is not enough. You must understand the nature of darkness, its subtlety, its weight. Only then will you be invincible." Harry nodded, swallowing hard. He felt the pull of something deep and ancient inside him, something that whispered promises of power and revenge and control. As the weeks went on, Harry's experiments became bolder. He started practicing mind manipulation spells on animals, testing limits, seeing how fear could bend will. He excused it to himself as learning, but the look in the creature's eyes, the shiver when his magic touched them, stirred a cold thrill he couldn't deny. Even the portraits in Hogwarts seemed to notice. The fat lady refused to look him in the eye, and the whispers from the Gryffindor ghost, nearly headless Nick, carried warnings that Harry tried to ignore. Then came the night that would change everything. Harry found himself outside the castle, near the forbidden forest, where shadows gathered unnaturally. Snape had sent him here to test his courage and his willingness to embrace darkness fully. "You must face fear itself, Potter," Snape's voice echoed from the shadows, "and bend it to your will. Only then will you understand what it means to be truly powerful." Harry stepped forward, wand raised, heart pounding, and the forest seemed to close in around him. This was no ordinary lesson. This was a test of the mind, of morality, of everything he had learned, and everything he was becoming. The forest was alive in a way Harry had never seen. Shadows slithered between the trees, moving as if they had their own will. The wind whispered his name, carrying strange voices that seemed half human, half animal. Every instinct in his body screamed to turn back, but Snape's words rang in his ears. "Face fear itself, Potter." Harry tightened his grip on his wand and stepped deeper into the forest. The air thickened, heavy with an unnatural chill that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. He could hear something moving, something large and dangerous, though he couldn't see it yet. The hairs on his arms bristled as the darkness seemed to shift, almost testing him, almost taunting him. Then it emerged, a creature taller than any human, its eyes glowing red, its form shrouded in smoke and shadows. Harry froze for a second, his heart hammering in his chest. It was unlike anything he'd ever seen, even in defense against the dark arts. This was pure, raw fear made flesh. Harry took a deep breath. I control this," he muttered to himself, trying to steady the tremor in his voice. He raised his wand. "You will not." The creature roared, a sound that rattled the trees and made Harry stumble back. Every instinct screamed to run, but he remembered Snape's lessons. Fear was energy, and energy could be wielded. Channel it, use it, control it. He focused, summoning all the fear he had felt in the past years, losing his parents, Voldemort's shadow over Hogwarts, the endless taunts, the pain of betrayal. The fear churned inside him, dark and hot. He raised his wand again, letting the darkness coalesce into a spell that was part shield, part weapon. The creature lunged. Its massive form crashed toward him, but Harry struck. The spell hit with a wave of force that staggered it, and for a moment, the creature froze. Harry felt the thrill of power surge through him. He could control this. He could dominate it. But then something unexpected happened. The creature's eyes reflected his own, and in that reflection, Harry saw a shadow of himself, angry, cold, consumed by the same darkness he now wielded. For a moment, he hesitated. The thrill of power clashed with a strange, piercing awareness. He could become this. He could lose himself completely. The hesitation almost cost him. The creature attacked again, faster, more ferocious. Harry barely blocked it, stumbling backward, feeling the forest floor scrape his palms. The adrenaline surged, the fear twisted inside him, but this time he didn't channel it. He felt it, acknowledged it, and let it fuel him without consuming him. With a final, controlled motion, he cast a spell that sent the creature sprawling into the shadows, where it dissipated into nothing but mist. Harry collapsed to his knees, chest heaving, wand trembling in his hand. He had faced fear itself, and he had survived, unbroken. But the victory was not sweet. He felt a chill run through him, a quiet voice inside whispering that this was only the beginning. Snape stepped out of the shadows, his expression unreadable. "Excellent, Potter," Snape said, his voice calm but carrying weight. "You faced what most wizards would flee from, but remember this: darkness is not just about power. It is about control, discipline, and understanding, and it will always demand more than you are willing to give." Harry nodded, still kneeling, wiping sweat and dirt from his forehead. I understand," he said, though he wasn't sure if he fully did. The darkness felt alive inside him now, almost like a companion and a warning. As they walked back to Hogwarts in silence, Harry realized something else. He was no longer the boy who had been afraid in the corridors. He had tasted real power, and it had left a mark on him. His friends would notice. The castle would notice. And the world beyond would notice when the time came. That night back in the Gryffindor common room, Harry sat alone by the fire. The shadows flickered across his face, and he thought of the creature, of the darkness he had wielded, and of the fine line he now walked. He could feel it stretching thinner every day, and he wondered, how far could he go before the darkness became more than a tool? The following week, Harry could feel the walls closing in. Whispers followed him in the corridors, some fearful, some admiring, but all aware of the change in him. Hermione avoided his gaze, and even Ron seemed uncertain how to reach him. The thrill of power that had once excited Harry now felt heavy, like a secret he could no longer hide. It all came to a head one afternoon in the library. Hermione confronted him again, standing with her arms crossed, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and frustration. "Harry, you can't keep doing this. Snape is twisting you, I know it." Harry's hand tightened around his wand. "I'm not twisted, Hermione. I'm learning. I'm getting stronger, something you all should understand. Don't tell me I can't defend myself." "You're not just defending yourself," she shouted. "You're scaring everyone. You're changing into someone I don't even recognize." Ron, standing behind her, swallowed hard. "Mate, she's right. You've been different for weeks. You're cold. You don't joke around, you don't laugh, and people are starting to fear you, including us." Harry felt a hot surge of anger. He had never been the kind of boy to back down. And the idea that his friends were judging him for trying to protect them cut deeper than he expected. "I'm not doing this for me, I'm doing it for all of us. If Voldemort comes back, if he comes after Hogwarts, you'll thank me someday." Hermione shook her head, tears brimming. "Power isn't everything, Harry. You can't let it take over. That's what Snape wants, to mold you into something darker, something you're not." Harry opened his mouth to argue, but no words came. For the first time, he felt doubt creep into him, mingling with the dark excitement he had grown used to. He knew she was partially right. Snape's lessons were teaching him things no one else could, and yet there was a pull in his chest, a warning that the line he walked was thinning. That night he practiced alone in the empty classroom. The darkness in his magic was easier to summon now, but harder to control. Every spell carried a thrill that was almost addictive, and every mistake left a small shadow in his mind, whispering that the power he wielded could easily consume him. A soft noise made him turn. A small group of Gryffindors had snuck in to confront him. Dean and Seamus were there, nervous but defiant. "Harry, what's going on with you?" Dean asked quietly. "We don't want to fight you, but this isn't you, not really." Harry gripped his wand tighter. "I'm trying to protect everyone. If you can't see that, stay out of my way." Seamus stepped closer, his hands raised. "Mate, we care about you. We don't care how strong you get if it's going to turn you into someone we can't trust." The words struck Harry like a curse. He knew he was different now. He knew they were right. But he also felt the pull of power, the thrill of control that Snape had taught him to crave. He could feel the dark energy humming at his fingertips, and in that moment, he realized he could make them fear him or respect him. A flicker of something sharp passed through his mind, and the room went cold. Harry shook his head violently, pushing back the thought. "No, I'm not yet. I won't hurt you, not my friends." But even as he said it, the tension hung in the air like smoke. Harry could feel it. This new path he had chosen was changing everything. Hogwarts would never see him the same way again. His friends might forgive him someday, or they might not. And deeper down, Harry knew that Snape's lessons were only the beginning. He returned to the dungeons, silently acknowledging the truth. Darkness was a teacher, yes, but it demanded attention, obedience, and sacrifice. And the boy who had once only dreamed of defeating Voldemort now wondered, could he wield this power without losing himself or those he loved? The days that followed were tense and strange. Harry had promised himself he wouldn't let the darkness consume him, but curiosity and power are hard to resist. Alone in the dungeons, he began experimenting further, pushing the boundaries of what Snape had taught him. It started small. Minor curses, subtle manipulations, spells that made objects move or quiver with unseen force. Then he moved on to animals, rats, owls, even the occasional frog in the classroom. He tested fear, control, and obedience, feeling an almost intoxicating thrill every time he succeeded. The creatures flinched, trembled, or obeyed without hesitation, and a part of him shivered, not from fear, but from excitement. Yet as the experiments grew bolder, consequences followed quickly. One evening, Harry tried a more advanced curse on a shadowy figure in the corridors, a test, he told himself. He had meant to scare, not harm, but the spell backfired. The figure stumbled, fell, and a harsh scream echoed through the halls. Harry froze. That scream, filled with pain and shock, echoed in his ears like a warning bell. His heart pounded as he ran toward the sound, wand at the ready. In a corner of the corridor, he found a first-year student, pale and trembling, clutching a scraped arm. "Harry, what did you do?" the boy stammered. Harry swallowed, guilt surging through him for the first time in weeks. I didn't mean to. It was supposed to be a test." But words felt hollow. He knew Snape would not approve of mistakes like this. Harry felt the weight of his growing power, realizing it was no longer under his full control. Darkness, he thought grimly, was not just a tool. It had its own will, feeding on mistakes he could no longer afford. That night Snape appeared in the dungeons, shadows wrapping around him like a cloak. "Potter," he said, his voice quiet but sharp, "what happened?" Harry explained in a rush, trying to convey the accident without revealing his growing thrill in testing limits. Snape listened, expression unreadable, and then he spoke, slower this time, measured. "Power," he said, "is not measured by your ability to destroy or intimidate. It is measured by your ability to control. Control over the spell, control over the target, control over yourself. You have tasted freedom, Potter, but freedom without discipline is chaos. And chaos will kill you faster than any enemy." Harry nodded, chastened but also restless. He understood, but part of him felt constrained. The excitement of pushing limits, of feeling the raw energy of magic bend to him, was addictive. Snape's warning echoed in his mind as both a lesson and a challenge. The following days brought other consequences. Rumors of strange incidents, the overturned cauldrons in the potions classroom, strange shadows in empty corridors, started spreading. Students whispered about Harry Potter's growing power, some in fear, others in awe. Hermione, worried more than ever, cornered him again. "Harry, stop this. You're experimenting with things you don't fully understand. You could seriously hurt someone or yourself." "I'm learning," he replied, almost defensively. "I have to be ready. Voldemort, he's coming back. If I can't control this, I'm not just failing me, I'm failing everyone." Hermione's eyes filled with sorrow. "But at what cost? You're changing, you're becoming someone else, someone we might not recognize." Harry turned away, feeling a strange mix of pride, fear, and guilt. She was right, and he knew it. He was changing, he was darker now, but he was also stronger, and he couldn't stop, not yet. Even Snape began to sense the dangerous edge. He approached Harry quietly one night in the dungeons, watching him practice a spell that made shadows twist into shapes of terrifying animals. "You are growing powerful," he said softly, almost approvingly, "but remember, one misstep, and the darkness you embrace will turn against you. One wrong move, and it will destroy more than just your target. It could destroy you." Harry nodded, feeling the weight of the warning deep in his chest. For the first time, he wondered if he was already too far gone. He had tasted power, and the taste lingered like fire in his veins. He knew he couldn't turn back completely, but he also realized that each step forward was a dangerous gamble. It started with a simple argument in the Great Hall. Professor McGonagall had noticed the subtle but dangerous shifts in Harry's magic, the way his spells carried an edge, a sharpness that made others flinch. She called him out in front of a group of students, her voice calm but heavy with authority. "Mr. Potter," she said, her eyes piercing, "it has come to my attention that your use of magic has become concerning. You are practicing spells far beyond your years, spells that bend the boundaries of what is safe, ethical, and acceptable." The hall went silent. Harry felt a strange mix of defiance and fear rise in him. He had trained under Snape, learned things no one else could teach him, and yes, he had tested limits. But now, under McGonagall's gaze, he felt exposed. "I am preparing," Harry said, his voice steady, though his hands twitched around his wand. "I'm preparing to defend this school, to protect my friends. I'm not reckless, I'm ready." McGonagall shook her head slowly. "You are not ready, Harry, and I fear that in your pursuit of strength, you risk becoming the very thing you seek to fight. You are stepping into darkness without understanding the consequences. You could hurt yourself, or worse, hurt those you care about." Harry felt a sharp tension in his chest. Every instinct screamed at him to defend his choices, to assert that he was stronger, smarter, and ready. And yet, the fear of losing control, the same fear Snape had warned him about, pressed against him like a heavy weight. Before he could respond, Hermione stepped forward, her eyes fierce. "She's right, Harry. You're not yourself anymore. You can't just keep pushing. Don't you see what this is doing to you, to us? We care about you, but you're changing." Ron's voice joined hers, shaking with emotion. "Mate, listen. You're strong, yeah, but you're starting to scare us. And if you keep going down this path, I don't know if we can follow you." The words cut deeper than any curse could. Harry's mind raced. Power, control, fear, love, loyalty. He felt the pull of the darkness within him, urging him to push back, to show them all that he was untouchable. And then he saw their faces, the worry, the hurt, the fear, and something in him faltered. A voice whispered inside him, faint but persistent, "Is this what you want to become? A wizard feared, not loved." Harry's grip on his wand loosened slightly. He could feel the shadows he had been summoning, the power that had made him feel invincible, stirring and pressing for dominance. But for the first time, he hesitated, not from fear of failure, but from fear of what he would lose. Snape's words echoed in his memory, "Darkness will take as much as you give it." Harry realized he had been giving too much. He had let the thrill of power, the control, the seductive pull of fear dictate his choices. And now, the faces of his friends, their trust and their loyalty, were dangling on the edge of a knife. He took a deep breath and stepped back. I won't let it take me," he said, his voice quieter than before but resolute. I won't hurt you, not my friends, not anyone here." McGonagall's expression softened slightly, though concern remained. Hermione blinked, tears threatening, and Ron exhaled slowly, relief evident. But Snape, watching from the shadows of the hall, felt a flicker of disappointment. Harry had power beyond most students, but he had chosen restraint. The lesson wasn't over. The darkness could wait, but it was patient, and Harry would have to wrestle with it again and again. That night, Harry returned to the Gryffindor common room, exhausted but thoughtful. He realized that power without control or without conscience was dangerous. And while the darkness was tempting, he understood something crucial. Mastery over magic wasn't just about skill or strength. It was about knowing when to wield it and when to hold back. Still, as he lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Harry couldn't deny the pull of the dark lessons Snape had taught him. He had tasted what it felt like to be unstoppable, to bend magic and fear to his will. And even though he had chosen restraint, he knew that the path he walked was narrow, dangerous, and far from over. For the first time, Harry felt the weight of true power and the cost of wielding it. The castle was quiet that night, the corridors empty except for the faint echo of Harry's footsteps. He moved through the shadows with a strange sense of ease now, aware of how much power flowed through him, and yet careful not to let it dominate. The lessons Snape had given him were a part of him now, woven into his movements, his thoughts, his very instincts. Sitting alone in the astronomy tower, Harry gazed at the stars above. They were distant, cold, and vast, so much like the darkness he had learned to channel. He thought about his friends, about Hermione's pleading eyes, Ron's worried expressions, and even Neville, who still believed in him despite everything. Could he protect them? Could he keep them safe while walking a path that edged so close to shadow? A flicker of movement drew his eyes to the edge of the tower. Shadows shifted unnaturally, and Harry felt the familiar thrill, the dark power stirring, whispering, offering possibilities he had never dared imagine. To bend, to control, to become unstoppable, the temptation was sharp and magnetic. He raised his wand, almost reflexively, feeling the energy hum beneath his skin. But this time he paused. He wasn't sure what he would do if he let it surge completely. He was stronger, smarter, faster than he had ever been, but at what cost? Snape's voice echoed in his memory, calm, cold, and uncompromising. Darkness will take as much as you give it. Harry understood it now in a way he hadn't before. Every spell, every curse, every moment of control had come with a price. Some of it was obvious, the fear in others' eyes, the tension with friends, but some of it was hidden, creeping into his mind like smoke. And yet a part of him longed to see how far he could go. The power was intoxicating, yes, but also revealing. It showed him what he was capable of, what he could achieve if he dared. He could dominate, he could protect, he could shape the world, or he could be consumed entirely by the shadows he had learned to wield. Harry's thoughts turned to the future. Voldemort's threat still loomed, stronger than ever. His friends might not understand, might even fear him if they glimpsed the depth of his abilities. And Hogwarts itself, how many would notice? How many would try to stop him if they knew what he was capable of? He exhaled slowly, letting the night wind brush against his face. The stars didn't answer, and the shadows whispered no guidance. The choice was his. He could embrace the darkness fully, risk losing himself, and perhaps gain a power the world had never seen. Or he could walk a tighter line, wielding his abilities carefully, keeping some measure of humanity intact, even as the whispers of temptation grew louder every day. The tower remained silent, the night deep and unbroken. Harry lowered his wand, but only slightly. He wasn't ready to decide yet. He had tasted what it meant to be powerful, had felt the thrill of bending fear and magic to his will. But the final step, the one that would define who he truly was, remained unwritten. For now he would watch, learn, and prepare. The darkness would wait, and so would he. Because the story was far from over. Days passed, but Harry couldn't shake the feeling that the castle itself was watching him. Every corridor, every shadow seemed heavier now, as if the walls remembered the power he had wielded in secret. Even the portraits whispered among themselves, their eyes lingering on him longer than usual. He wasn't sure if it was fear, curiosity, or something else, but it made him uneasy. Snape's lessons still echoed in his mind, sharper and darker than ever. Control is not just about spells, it is about the mind, Potter. Bend your fear, bend theirs, bend reality itself. Harry had practiced tirelessly, feeling the energy hum like a living thing beneath his skin. Every time he succeeded, the thrill surged through him. Every time he failed, the shadows reminded him how fragile his control really was. One evening, as he wandered near the edge of the forbidden forest, Harry sensed movement, something that didn't belong, something alive and aware. He raised his wand instinctively, and the air seemed to thicken around him. The darkness felt almost magnetic, calling him forward. He could follow it into the forest, test himself further, see just how far his magic could stretch. And then a voice called out from the shadows, low, calm, and unmistakably human, "Potter." Harry spun, wand raised. The figure stepped into the moonlight. It wasn't a student, not exactly. It was someone older, cloaked, their presence carrying authority and danger in equal measure. Harry felt a chill run through him, the kind that made the hair on the back of his neck stand on end. "You've grown strong," the voice said, "stronger than I expected." Harry narrowed his eyes. "Who are you?" The figure smiled faintly, but there was no warmth in it. "Someone who knows the road you're walking, and someone who can either guide you or stop you before it's too late." Harry felt the pull of the darkness beneath his skin, the urge to test, to strike, to prove himself. And yet this stranger's presence made him hesitate. His mind raced. Could this person be a threat or a teacher? Could they see the edge he was teetering on, the shadow growing inside him? "I don't need guidance," Harry said finally, trying to sound braver than he felt. "I can handle myself." The figure's eyes glinted in the moonlight. "Handle yourself? Potter, you've only scratched the surface. The power you've touched, it isn't a game. And soon you will have to choose, embrace it fully or risk losing everything you care about." Harry's wand tightened in his hand. The words were both a warning and a challenge. He knew the stranger was right. Every step he had taken down this path had been a gamble, a push against his own limits. Every spell, every fear he had bent, every shadow he had summoned had left its mark. He looked toward the forest, where darkness waited like a patient predator. He could step forward, push the boundaries of his magic further, and risk losing himself completely, or he could step back, hold some measure of control, and face the consequences of restraint. The stranger's gaze pierced him, unyielding. "The choice isn't forever, Potter. Soon it will be forced upon you. When that moment comes, will you be ready, or will the darkness claim you first?" Harry felt the wind sweep through the trees, the night pressing in on him. He didn't answer. He didn't move. All he knew was that the world had changed, and so had he. The shadows inside him pulsed with possibility, danger, and temptation. And far in the distance, beyond the edges of the forbidden forest, something stirred, something that had been waiting, watching, and waiting for the right moment to test him. Harry lifted his wand, eyes fixed on the darkness. He knew one thing for certain: his story was far from over. The next choice he made could change everything, for him, for his friends, for Hogwarts, and for the very world he thought he knew. Harry took a cautious step toward the edge of the forest. The figure didn't move, yet Harry felt as if every shadow around him shifted in response to their presence. The moonlight barely reached the ground, and the darkness seemed to thrum like a heartbeat beneath his feet. "I asked you a question, Potter," the voice said again, calm, but carrying a weight that made Harry's blood run cold. "Will you embrace the power within you, or continue to walk on the knife's edge?" Harry tightened his grip on his wand. I don't know yet," he admitted, the words tasting bitter. He had felt the pull of darkness for weeks, the thrill, the control, the fear he could command. But he also remembered Hermione's voice, Ron's warning, and the lessons of restraint he had fought to hold on to. The figure moved suddenly, stepping from the shadows into a shaft of moonlight. Harry's heart skipped a beat. They were older, taller than most professors, cloaked in black robes that seemed to absorb the light. Their wand was pointed loosely at him, but there was no aggression, only observation. "You have potential," the figure said, "more than any student I have seen in decades, but potential without discipline is dangerous. You have been tasting darkness, Potter. You've been learning its language, bending it, testing it, and now it tests you." Harry swallowed hard, feeling the cold hum of power under his skin. "Tests, yes, but I'm not afraid of it," he said, trying to sound confident. He felt the shadows around him stir in response, as if drawn to his growing energy. The figure's eyes glinted. "Fear is not weakness, Potter. It is a tool. You have learned to use it, yes, but you have also been tempted. You could take this further, further than even Snape has guided you, and when you do, there will be consequences." Harry felt a rush of adrenaline. The thought of testing himself, of seeing just how far he could push the darkness, made his pulse pound. He could feel the energy inside him, raw and responsive, waiting for his command. But alongside it, a small voice of caution whispered, "This is more than a lesson, it could change everything." "Who are you?" Harry asked finally, lowering his wand slightly, though still wary. The figure smiled faintly. "Someone who knows what lies ahead, someone who has walked this path, and someone who will watch closely to see if you are ready or if the darkness will consume you first." Harry's mind raced. He wanted answers, he wanted guidance, he wanted power, but he also wanted to remain himself, not lose the friends and world he still cared about. And he realized something terrifying: there was no clear path forward. Every choice carried risk. Every spell, every whisper of shadow could either elevate him or destroy him. The figure stepped back into the shadows, their voice fading. "Decide carefully, Potter. The next time we meet, the choice may not be yours to make." Harry stood alone, the wind whipping through the trees, the darkness pressing in, and the stars above cold and distant. He felt the pull of everything he had learned from Snape, the thrill of mastery, the shadow growing stronger inside him. And somewhere beyond the forest, something waited, something patient, something that knew Harry had tasted the darkness, and now it wanted to see just how far he would go. Harry lifted his wand again, his eyes narrowing. He didn't yet know the outcome, didn't yet know if he would be the master of the shadows or their prisoner. But one thing was certain: nothing in Hogwarts or the wizarding world would ever be the same again. The next morning, Harry couldn't focus in class. Every word of Professor Flitwick's charms lesson felt distant, as if the forest and the shadows he had faced last night clung to his thoughts. His wand pulsed faintly at his side, reminding him of the raw energy simmering beneath his control. He had tasted true darkness, and it had left a mark. By afternoon, he found himself wandering near the edge of the forbidden forest again. He told himself it was curiosity, a test, a need to understand his limits, but part of him knew it was something deeper. Power had become a drug, a pulse he couldn't ignore. Harry's first real test came sooner than he expected. A small group of first years had wandered too far into the forest, chasing after a stray magical creature. Panic rose in him instantly. He couldn't let them be harmed. And yet, he knew that the forest was alive with strange, shifting shadows, remnants of what he had felt before, restless and unpredictable. He raised his wand, calling the energy inside him forward. The shadows obeyed, bending subtly to his will. With careful movements, Harry created illusions that guided the children back toward the castle, keeping them safe from the hidden dangers around them. But there was a thrill in bending the darkness like this, an intoxicating feeling that made his heart race. When the children were safely back in the castle, he lingered at the forest's edge, letting the shadows swirl around him. That's when he sensed it, movement again, subtle and deliberate. The mysterious figure had returned, watching him from a distance. "You're growing bold, Potter," the voice called, low and measured. "Testing your limits, using the shadows for protection, and yet I sense the temptation to go further, to use them for dominance rather than defense." Harry stiffened. He began, then stopped. He realized he didn't want to lie, but he also didn't want to admit how much the power excited him. "I'm trying to control it," he said finally. "I'm careful." The figure's eyes glinted from the shadows. "Careful for now, but darkness is patient. It will wait for a crack in your will, Potter, and when it finds it, it will demand more than you imagine." Harry exhaled slowly. "I'll be ready," he said, though a small part of him wondered if that was true. The forest pulsed around him like a living thing, alive with unseen eyes and whispers. The energy inside him hummed with anticipation, eager to be tested again. He turned back toward the castle, feeling the power inside him sharpen, controlled but hungry. Each step was deliberate. Each motion with his wand reminded him that he had grown, that he was no longer the same boy who had stumbled into the dungeons months ago. And yet he couldn't ignore the pull of what was waiting beyond the forest, in the shadows, in the whispers of the wind. Something was coming, something patient, something that would test him in ways he could not yet predict. Harry's thoughts returned to his friends, Hermione's eyes, Ron's worry, the faces of those he had vowed to protect. Could he wield this power and still remain the person they trusted? Could he walk the line between control and obsession without falling completely into the darkness? The shadows danced around him as he reached the edge of the castle grounds. He lifted his wand and let the energy hum beneath his fingers, testing its responsiveness. It obeyed, bending to his will with fluidity and precision. A thrill surged through him. He was ready, he thought, ready for what came next. And somewhere in the forest, the mysterious figure vanished silently, leaving only the echo of their words in Harry's mind. Soon the real test begins, and this time it will not wait for your hesitation. The night was darker than usual. Fog rolled in low over the forbidden forest, curling around tree trunks like living fingers. Harry moved carefully, wand in hand, the shadows around him responding almost instinctively to his presence. The thrill of power hummed under his skin, but so did a sharp edge of caution. He knew something was out there, something alive, watching, waiting. He hadn't gone far when a sudden movement caught his eye. A massive shape emerged from the fog, taller than any centaur, more jagged than any creature he'd seen. Its eyes glowed like molten gold, and every step it took sent vibrations through the forest floor. Harry's heart hammered, but he didn't flee. Instead, he raised his wand, feeling the darkness inside him pulse and coil like a spring. The creature roared, a deep sound that echoed through the trees. Harry's first instinct was to strike, but he remembered Snape's lessons. Control, precision, understanding. He didn't just attack. He bent the shadows around him, weaving them into barriers, illusions, and traps. The creature lunged, and Harry twisted, sending a sharp bolt of energy that grazed it, enough to stagger but not destroy. It circled him, watching, calculating. Harry could feel its intelligence, its awareness. This wasn't a mindless animal. This was something that challenged him, tested him. The shadows obeyed him, bending and warping at his command, but the creature adapted, slipping through, striking in ways that forced him to think faster, react sharper. For the first time, Harry realized the truth of Snape's words. Darkness was not just a tool. It was alive, demanding attention, respect, and understanding. If he failed, even for a moment, it could turn on him. Harry's mind raced. He felt the thrill of control, the intoxicating pull of bending fear and shadows to his will. But he also felt doubt, a whisper that reminded him of Hermione's warnings, Ron's worry, and the fragile line he was walking. The creature roared again and charged. Harry ducked and spun, calling on the dark energy within him to create illusions that confused it, shadows that shifted and warped to disorient it. He was faster than it expected, more cunning. And yet, it kept coming, relentless, forcing him to push harder, bend more, and risk losing control. In a burst of instinct, Harry unleashed a more advanced spell, a mixture of light, shadow, and force, bending the forest itself into a cage around the creature. For a moment, it froze, struggling against the magical bindings. Harry's heart raced. The power coursing through him was exhilarating, but dangerous. Too much, too fast, and he could lose himself entirely. The creature's eyes met his, and in them Harry saw something terrifying, a reflection of himself. Raw, powerful, unrestrained, and hungry for more. For a heartbeat, he felt the pull of that side of himself, the side that could dominate, conquer, control everything without thought or mercy. He shook his head violently, forcing the thought away. "No," he whispered, "I'm not lost yet, not here, not now." With careful precision, he released the spell, allowing the creature to vanish back into the fog rather than destroying it. He stood alone in the clearing, chest heaving, wand trembling slightly in his hand. The thrill of power was still there, intoxicating, but now mixed with awareness, the knowledge that he had been closer to crossing a line than ever before. And somewhere in the shadows, he knew the mysterious figure had been watching. Their patience had not waned. The test was far from over. Harry lowered his wand, letting the shadows recede, but he could feel them still, waiting. The forest was quiet now, but the pull of darkness, the thrill of power, and the tension of choice would not leave him. He turned back toward Hogwarts, knowing one thing clearly: the next encounter, the next test, would demand more than he had yet faced. and the next choice he made could decide not just his fate, but the fate of everyone he cared about. The days after the forest encounter felt heavier. Harry moved through Hogwarts like a shadow himself, aware of the power coiling inside him, whispering for release. He couldn't stop thinking about the creature he had faced, the way it had mirrored his own strength, his own hunger. The thrill of control lingered in his veins, mingled with a cold awareness of how close he had come to losing himself. Unable to resist, Harry began experimenting in secret. He found quiet corners of the castle, the unused classrooms, empty corridors, even the library after hours, where he could test subtle spells on objects and shadows. Candles bent toward him without touch, books flipped open, and portraits seemed to shift their gaze in his favor. The energy obeyed, bending not just to his will, but to his emotions. Fear, anger, curiosity, all amplified the magic. But his experiments weren't harmless. A broom levitated too fast and crashed into a wall. A suit of armor's helmet spun off, clattering through the corridor, nearly hitting Peeves. Even the shadows of students walking by seemed to twist and wrinkle subtly when he passed. Harry could feel the castle sensing him, and it thrilled him and terrified him. That night, as he lingered in the astronomy tower, the familiar presence returned. The mysterious figure stepped from the shadows, their cloak blending into the night. "You continue to push limits, Potter," they said, voice calm but sharp. "And with each test, you draw closer to a line you may not be able to step back from." Harry held his wand steady. "I'm learning control, I'm careful." The figure's eyes glinted. "Careful, yes, for now, but your power is hungry, Potter, and hunger demands satisfaction. Every time you use it, it grows stronger. Every time you resist, it waits, but only briefly. Soon, the temptation will be irresistible. You must ask yourself, what will you do when there is no more room for hesitation?" Harry's heart pounded. The forest, the shadows, the creature he had faced, all of it pressed against his thoughts. The dark energy inside him pulsed, alive and impatient. He could feel the thrill of mastery, the seductive pull to push further, to dominate, to see how far he could truly go. "I'll be ready," he said, though the words carried uncertainty. The figure stepped closer, just beyond the reach of the moonlight. "Being ready is more than knowing spells, Potter. It is knowing yourself and what you are willing to risk. Power without conscience is a weapon. Power without restraint is a trap." Harry lowered his wand slightly, feeling the weight of those words. He thought of Hermione, of Ron, of everyone who trusted him. Could he wield this power and still be the friend, the protector, the person they believed in? Could he face the coming threats without letting the darkness take more than he intended? The figure vanished silently, leaving only the echo of their warning. Harry remained in the tower, the night wind tangling through his hair, wand humming faintly in his grip. The pull of the shadows was stronger than ever. He could feel it urging him forward, daring him to test limits that even Snape hadn't. Somewhere in the castle, unseen, the whispers of his dark experiments were spreading. The shadows themselves seemed to lean toward him, hungry for release, for power, for what he might yet become. Harry clenched his wand, eyes narrowing. He knew the next choice he made would define him, and in the distance, he could sense that the mysterious figure, patient, watchful, and unyielding, was already waiting for it. The path forward was no longer just about learning. It was about deciding who he would be and how far he was willing to go to wield the power he had tasted. The next evening, Harry felt a shift in the castle, a subtle, almost imperceptible vibration in the air that made him tense. The shadows seemed heavier, lingering longer as he walked through the empty corridors. He had a sense that tonight something was coming, something that would demand more of him than anything he had faced before. Near the edge of the forbidden forest, the mysterious figure appeared again, stepping from the shadows like they had been waiting for him. This time, their presence was sharper, more commanding. Harry raised his wand instinctively, but the figure didn't flinch or move aggressively. "Potter," the figure said, voice calm yet cutting, "you've learned much. You've tested control, you've bent shadows, you've faced fear and survived. But now you will face a challenge designed not to teach you, but to test you. Will you wield your power fully, or will hesitation cost you everything?" Before Harry could answer, the figure raised their wand, and the fog around them thickened. Shapes began to emerge, phantoms of twisted creatures, echoes of fears, shadows given form. They lunged at him, circling, attacking, testing his reflexes and control. Harry felt the dark energy inside him pulse furiously. Instinct took over. He raised his wand, summoning the shadows he had been training with, bending them into shields, barriers, and striking illusions. The phantoms collided with his defenses, roaring, twisting, and striking again. Every movement demanded precision, every spell required control, and Harry could feel the thrill and danger surging together. But something unexpected happened. One of the phantoms reflected him, his anger, his ambition, the pull of the darker instincts he had been nurturing. For a heartbeat, Harry felt the temptation to release everything, to crush, dominate, and command without restraint. The shadows inside him stirred, eager, hungry, whispering promises of total power. He faltered for a moment. That hesitation allowed one of the phantoms to slip past his defenses, striking him lightly but enough to jolt him. Harry's pulse raced. The thrill of power surged, but so did fear, the knowledge that even now he could lose control if he misstepped. The mysterious figure watched silently, letting him struggle and adapt. "Potter," they said finally, "strength is not only the ability to wield magic, it is the choice to wield it wisely, to know what to strike and what to spare. Darkness obeys." "Yes, but only if you obey yourself first." Harry exhaled, forcing himself to focus. He reshaped the shadows, bending them carefully to contain and push back the phantoms without destroying them. Slowly, the illusions dissipated, leaving him standing in the fog, chest heaving, wand trembling but steady. The figures stepped closer, their cloak blending with the shadows around them. "You are stronger than many adults, Potter, smarter than most. But tonight, you have learned something far more important than spells or fear. You have learned the weight of choice. And the next time, you may not get a chance to hesitate. Will you be ready then?" Harry didn't answer immediately. He lowered his wand, feeling the pull of the shadows inside him still humming, waiting for release. The night was silent again, but the tension lingered. He knew the figure's test wasn't over, it never would be. And as he turned back toward the castle, the wind carrying whispers through the trees, Harry realized something chilling. The next time he faced this trial, he might have to decide whether to embrace the darkness fully or risk losing everything he still held dear. The forest remained quiet, but Harry could feel eyes watching him, waiting for the moment he would make that choice. The shadows hummed in response, alive and patient. The story wasn't over, not by far. Harry stood at the edge of the forbidden forest one last time, wand in hand, shadows swirling like liquid night around him. The lessons, the tests, the temptations, they had all led to this moment. The mysterious figure, cloaked in darkness, stepped forward, their presence both a warning and a challenge. "You have grown powerful, Potter," the figure said, voice calm but sharp, "stronger than most wizards in a lifetime. But power is not the measure of a wizard. The true test is whether you can control it, whether you can choose wisely, and whether you can carry it without being consumed." Harry's chest heaved. He remembered every step of his journey, the duels, the experiments, the thrill of bending shadows and fear. He remembered the creature in the forest, the phantoms, his friends, worried faces, and Snape's warnings. Every choice, every spell had brought him here. He raised his wand, feeling the dark energy pulse like a living thing. For a moment, he considered unleashing it fully, bending everything to his will. The temptation was irresistible, power beyond imagining, fear and respect at his fingertips, a way to reshape the world. But then he thought of Hermione, Ron, the students of Hogwarts, the boy he had once been. He thought of what it meant to protect, not just dominate, to control without letting darkness consume him. Slowly, deliberately, Harry exhaled and let the shadows settle, bending them into patterns of defense and guidance rather than destruction. The mysterious figure watched silently, a faint hint of approval in their gaze. "You have chosen restraint," they said, "but restraint does not mean weakness. You have shown that power is nothing without conscience, and that control is earned, not demanded. Remember this, Potter. Darkness will always wait, always tempt, but the choice is yours always." Harry lowered his wand fully, feeling both relief and exhaustion. He had tasted the full scope of power and had walked back from the edge. He had tested the darkness and lived to tell it, not because he was invincible, but because he had chosen wisely. The figure faded into the shadows, leaving only the whisper of their words behind. Harry turned back toward Hogwarts, the first light of dawn brushing the towers with gold. The castle seemed quieter, almost respectful, as if acknowledging the journey he had taken. He knew the darkness would never fully leave him. The lessons, the power, the shadow inside, it would always be there, a part of him, a tool and a challenge. But he also knew he could walk the line. He could wield what he had learned without losing himself. Harry looked up at the rising sun, Wand at his side. Hogwarts awaited, his friends awaited, and the world awaited the choices he would make. He had embraced the darkness without surrendering to it, and in that balance he had found strength, strength that would shape him, guide him, and define him for years to come. The story didn't end with a single victory or defeat. It ended with a choice, and Harry Potter had made his. The first weeks of the new term at Hogwarts were quieter than usual. Students whispered about the strange events in the Forbidden Forest and the subtle shifts in Harry's magic, but most kept their distance. Harry moved through the halls with calm confidence now, aware of the power he had learned to control, but careful not to let it show recklessly. Hermione approached him one afternoon, her brows furrowed but her eyes soft. "You changed," she said quietly, "but I think you're still Harry, that's a relief." Harry smiled faintly. "I'm still me, just a little stronger, a little wiser, and I've learned something important. Power isn't about dominating, it's about choosing when to use it and why." Ron clapped him on the shoulder, grinning nervously. "Good, because you were starting to scare me there for a while." Even Snape, who had been watching from the shadows, allowed himself a brief nod of approval. Harry had survived the lessons, the temptations, and the trials. He had grown stronger than most could imagine, yet had resisted the darkness' pull. But Harry knew better than anyone that this was not the end. Somewhere beyond the castle walls, in forests, shadows, and hidden corners of the wizarding world, challenges waited. Creatures, curses, and unseen enemies would test him again, and the lessons of restraint and control would be just as important as any spell. That night, as he stood atop the astronomy tower, looking at the moonlight reflecting off the castle towers, Harry allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. The shadows whispered softly around him, not threatening, not hungry, but alive, reminding him of the power he had mastered and the choice he had made. He tightened his grip on his wand, a small smile forming on his lips. Whatever came next, he was ready to face it, not because he was fearless, not because he had all the answers, but because he had learned to walk the line between darkness and light, and he had chosen to keep walking it. The night wind carried the faint echo of the mysterious figure's warning, "Darkness will always wait." Harry didn't flinch, he welcomed it. Because now he was ready.